So yeah, welcome to this session today about how to scale control charts. So as Carrie mentioned, my name's Tom Ferber. I'm a product manager here at BCN. So for anyone that's not familiar with BCN, we're a Microsoft technology partner, and we specialize in digital transformation, helping organizations unlock the value of their data, that kind of thing. And I'm joined today by my colleague Oliver Chan, who's our EasySPC product lead. Oliver, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, morning everyone. So as Tom said, I'm the ESPC product lead here at BCN, and essentially I support all of our customers in their adoption of control charts and supporting them, automating processes, etc., around their data and architecture. Really, thanks.
Thank you, Oliver.
And we're also joined by Lauren, who's kind enough to join us today from our partners PMI. Lauren, do you want to say a couple of words?
Yeah. So I'm Lauren. I'm Director of Digital and Customer Experience at PMI, and if we focus on the customer experience piece of that role for today, I work with partners like BCN to make sure that the services and products that we offer kind of knit together with the rest of the training and consultancy, which means I get to do lots of exciting things like this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lauren. So just to set the scene a little bit about what we wanted to cover today and why we've arranged this session. So we've been having lots of conversations with different organisations across a whole range of different sectors, manufacturing, healthcare, professional services, and essentially we keep hearing the same thing, right? That we see a real appetite out there to use control charts and use them broadly across a whole organisation. But when people try and do that, they consistently hit practical barriers to actually making that happen. So yeah, we wanted to run the session today just to help people figure out how to sort of drive informed decision making across every level of the organization with SPC. So in terms of a bit of an agenda, we'll keep it high level, but we've got first bit, I'll just high level bit at the start, just about the potential, what we think the potential is of using SPC and control charts at scale. Another the title is how to scale control charts, but we thought it'd be worth a little bit about the why you might want to do that, and what we believe is possible when it comes to scaling control charts across an organization. Oliver's then going to give a real example or a couple of examples about how organizations are actually using that successfully today. And then Lauren's going to present a bit about how PMI are actually using control charts, and actually some really interesting insight into actually what it takes operationally to make that work day to day. And yeah, we've got time for questions, and I think importantly, we want to have a bit of a discussion with you about some of the challenges you're facing and how we might be able to help. So hopefully that sounds all right, and broadly what you were expecting. But before we didn't dive into this, we were going to do a poll, just to understand a little bit more about where people are at with control charts today. But maybe it's only Kirsten on the call. We've got another joiner now. Is it Gemma? Just to get a bit of a feel for to what extent you're using SPC or control charts in your organization today. So there's a little poll we've set up. So if you wouldn't mind just clicking that, that'd be really interesting to know, please.
Yeah, as there's always two of you on the call, if you want to have an open discussion as well, or instead of, then that's more than welcome. Did you want to make any comments?
So definitely in quality control, and a little bit in the production area, but I'm keen to keep going back into the production area, because once it's got to quality control, it's done. The product's been made, which is great for trends.
Yeah.
So we can see if things are altering, but it's how do we really embed that earlier on in the process?
Yeah, you want to catch those defects and stuff, don't you, before they happen? Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Got you. Thanks, Kirsten.
And has there been a want or a need on the other side as well, from a sort of management overall performance, sort of, this is what we've achieved over the last month, year, 2 years, over a period of time, to understand, okay, how are we performing and across certain metrics?
That's the journey we're on now.
Right.
Management are starting to really understand the power and importance of the early warning. So we needed to make 10 tons today. We've only made 8. Why? Yeah, and then why couldn't we have dealt with this earlier? So it's becoming more common sort of talking point.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, Kirsten. Well, hopefully there's a few bits in this that might be useful for you on that journey.
Right.
So, Oliver, if we could just jump onto the next slide for me, please. So, first of all, I think just a bit about about why we're excited about SPC as a methodology and why we think it matters. So, we believe, right, that SPC has the ability, the potential to fundamentally change how organizations make decisions and at all levels, right? So for all the reasons you'll know there around, instead of reacting to every blip in the data and lurching from one issue to another and chasing random variation and all that unnecessary firefighting, which, it's really important stuff, right? And I say SPC gives you that framework to be able to do that, right? And know where you to focus your attention and when to leave the process alone. And for all those reasons there, right, you get that true understanding. You can see patterns in the data, the consistency, and everyone's interpreting the data in the same way. You can reduce waste, which ultimately all stack up to better decision making, right? So we believe that all those benefits, right, and all that better decision making is something that is absolutely relevant across all levels of an organization and at each stage of the production process. So just as a real sort of example on this as well from my sort of personal experience. So my background is actually in healthcare and performance management. And I've, as part of that, seen firsthand the transformation that using SPC at scale can actually drive. So you might be aware of this already, but in recent years, healthcare has really embraced SPC and control charts as a methodology. So the NHS in the UK now has actually moved away from using red, amber, green ratings to actually mandating that hospitals and healthcare providers should be using SPC as the method to monitor processes. And we're talking here from everything from waiting times to infection rates to mortality metrics, the whole shebang. And so why are they doing that? So essentially, the healthcare realized what manufacturing has probably known for decades, right? Is that when you're dealing with all these complex processes, you need that statistically robust way to understand what's happening. So we've got right up to hospital boards now. They're using SPC charts to monitor performance across the whole organization. Now, the thing with this in healthcare is it's not just about if there's quality improvement projects. It's grown to be that strategic organization-wide monitoring. So it's right from daily operational management right up to board level decision making. So everybody's the whole organization is looking at the data through the full lens, right? So the same lens, sorry. But I guess the important bit and the thing for today was that we've, in healthcare, going through that journey, have discovered the challenges that you guys might be facing, right? That there's a gap, I think, between seeing the value of SPC, but actually being able to sort of implement it at true scale. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about. Can you just jump onto the next slide for me, please, Oliver? This is a bit similar to what I just mentioned, but Kirsten, to your sort of point, I think what we're seeing, many organisations are using SPC for that quality and control, like that monitoring for improvement projects, and that is absolutely driving really valuable work. So it's not not to diminish that in any way whatsoever, but I think what we're sort of talking about here and what we've seen and experienced in healthcare is that the benefits of taking SPC to that next level and really growing it in the organisation are huge. That strategic monitoring, that top to bottom visibility of what's going on, that cross-functional consistency. So everybody's using that same methodology, everyone's having the same similar conversations, looking at the same version of the truth, but also really importantly, that holistic insights as well. So it's not just looking at data in isolation, it's taking a step back and being able to bring together different data sets, whether that's operational data, finance data, other system data, to get that really complete picture about what's going on is really valuable. And all that sort of stacks up to really sort of driving that continuous improvement culture that we know is so important. And for the flip of that, and Oliver, if you just jump onto the next slide, what we're sort of regularly seeing today is this, right, that we're seeing when we talk to organizations, SPC is being used in some really valuable, impactful ways, and teams running in quality improvement projects kind of thing, but consistently we're just seeing it used like in silos, essentially. So different departments maybe using different tools and different approaches. You've seen that's resulting in teams analysing the data from single sources. They're not getting that broader view. A lot of manual process. So whether that's even things like Excel or even specialised statistical packages, they're great, right, for doing that deep analysis. But it can be quite tricky then to actually try and scale them across the organisation more broadly. And all that sort of stacks together to really give that sort of lack of visibility across that sort of management reporting layer, and that whole strategic oversight piece we find is often missing. So yeah, that's just a little bit of our view on this. So we've got loads of organisations that see the value of it and are using it, but the challenge really is that how do you actually deploy it consistently at scale across all levels of the organisation? Because if without that, can be missing out on some really major benefits. So there's a bit of context. Hopefully that sort of resonates, makes a bit of sense. We're going to do a little. I'll hand back to Oliver now. So we're going to do another little poll, just really about some of the challenges that you're perhaps facing today when you are actually trying to scale it, because where we can then share a little bit about how using technology and other approaches you can get around them.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So yeah, same again, Kirsten, Gemma. Feel free to pop your answers in the poll itself, and/or if you'd like to comment, particular anything as well related, then happy to have that conversation now as well. Obviously doing that, I'm going to try and look at the results in the chat and see what people are saying. So yeah, fairly broad. I think most have been hit. So the two which are coming through as the highest votes so far are data issues. So I guess data quality issues. Is that what you're leaning towards, or is it access to data, or anything else, or it could be all of the above?
It's true, actually. Yeah, it is all of the above. Yeah, quality of data and knowing what data to collect. And I put other down because sometimes it's just seen as a tick in a box exercise for maybe regulatory purposes.
Right.
Do you use SPC? Yes.
Okay.
And it's not really understood as how powerful and useful it can be.
Yeah, and I guess that potentially leads into, so I'd say it might not be yourself as well this, but someone's also mentioned leadership buy-in, and sort of that top from the top down approach, isn't it? Yeah. Understanding the benefits and the value of control charts and why we use them.
And it can go all the way down to the shop floor as well, like, absolutely. Another form to fill in, more data to collect.
Yeah, that's seeing it potentially as more of a burden than it is of value.
Yeah.
Because of that. Okay, no, that's really helpful to understand. Okay, well, what we'll do now is, I'll just talk you through a couple of examples. Before doing that, though, what I wanted to share with you is, we, as Tom mentioned there, we have conversations with organizations all around the world in different industries, from healthcare to manufacturing, to mining, etc., on how they're using data in general and process automation, and ultimately control charts. Now, what most, if not all, say they're either wanting to achieve or achieving is, firstly, they're capturing data. So usually that's coming from your data source systems, which are, your operational systems, your finance systems, HR, sales, etc. And it's automatically collated into a data source of sorts, a data warehouse or a database, etc. But then there's almost always other bits of information around an organization which you're looking to capture. So that could be quality improvement project data. How are we capturing that? Is that in Excel or Word? It could be surveys to either external customers or internal staff, etc. How are we collating that? Is that over the phones or via email, or the electric forms, paper forms, etc., etc. And there's a whole host of these different processes where we're capturing data. A lot of the time in today's world, we're moving to more automated ways of doing that, but sometimes they can still be quite manual. And then when they are manual, then we're having to, and I guess this could be alluded to some of what you were saying before, Kirsten, regarding the data issues. It's how do we get access to that data? How do we wrestle with that data to get into a shape and format that way it's ready for some reporting and creating some dashboards and reports? And then we go away and go into our chosen reporting tool of choice for the organization, whether that's Excel, Power BI, QuickView, Tableau, etc. And we go away and we create the reports and dashboards. Sometimes we've got our operational clinical systems, HR systems have their own reporting tools as well, and out of the box reports, which we can look to utilize. And ultimately, there'll be some teams of people who are then using other tools to maybe create control charts with as well. I think Excel was mentioned before, and obviously there's other tools out there which are very popular when we're coming to creating control charts. And then what we'd like to do is we'd like to analyze that data, understand the insights. Why is the CPK gone higher or lower this particular week, day, month? Why are we in a special cause, etc., and understanding what the data is telling us. And we'd like to action those insights. And that in general is what most organizations across industries all around the world are telling us they're either achieving or striving to achieve one way or another. Now, what most tell us is that in reality, most of the challenge is actually on the left-hand side, because most of the time is actually spent collating that data, manipulating that data, and creating the reports and dashboards, and hopefully having time to create the control charts as well in Excel or wherever it may be. That actually we get very little time, if any, spent on the right-hand side, where it's actually going to deliver us value for the organization. So the amount of times that we've had conversations like this with organizations, and there's 20 analysts on a call. Their role is analysts, and they're all nodding along to this and they're saying, yep, we're analysts, but I can't tell you the last time I've actually been able to analyze data. Because in the reality is they're on their project work, they create the reports and dashboards, whether that's, as mentioned before, Power BI, Tableau, Excel, Click, or any reporting tool, spending hours, days potentially creating those reports and dashboards. And once they've done that and delivered it, shared it with their leader or whoever their colleagues, they're on to the next project and the next report and dashboard. So they never actually get the opportunity to understand what's happening under the hood of the data. That all makes sense there?
Yeah.
So what we would like to do is help you understand how we can sort of flip the script here and say, actually, let's help you automate as much of the left-hand side as possible, so we can spend more time on the right-hand side where it's actually going to deliver us value. And that's what we're supporting organizations with in those different remits. And for today's conversation, we're going to be focusing more on this piece here in regards to the control chart element of that specifically. But as you're aware, that in today's world, automation of all different areas is absolutely viable and something that we're all looking to do. Okay, I'm going to switch from my slide deck now into a live demo, which is always fun. So let's just do that, and I'll cross that off because I was testing something earlier. Okay, so I'm going to start off sharing my screen on a healthcare demo. So this is using healthcare data. You can see in the top right there, we work quite closely with the Children's Hospital in the US, Cincinnati Children's over in Ohio. We're actually the #1 ranked children's hospital in the whole of the US as well. And they've got a strong following and sort of methodology from a CI perspective embedded in the organization from the top down. They've got a specific section of the organization, what they call the Anderson Center, which is all around quality and quality improvement for their organization. Now, the purpose of sort of sharing this really with you is for multiple reasons, really, but at its highest level, what we're seeing here is the ability to no longer look at static reports and control charts, but move to more dynamic control charts. And what I mean by that is, most of the conversations that we have are, we're creating control charts in Excel and Minitab, etc., but they're in separate tools, almost reporting tools, to what the rest of our data and reporting is we're looking at, whether that's Power BI, Tableau, etc. But it also means that you've got one chart and one way of looking at it, and then if something needs changing, then we'll spend a few hours and maybe we'll get to that tomorrow or next week, etc. So it's very hard to empower the end users, the leadership teams, the operational managers, etc., to explore their own data using control charts. So what you can achieve is things like this, where yes, we've got a control chart looking, in this example, we're looking at across 4 years worth of data across all campuses, divisions, and sites of care. However, what we can do as an end user then is start to explore data in different ways and say, actually, I'm interested in, for instance, the ambulatory site of care. And I could click on the visualization here and it will filter my SPC chart essentially. I've got a brand new SPC chart now based on that specific site of care for ambulatory. So it's empowering the end users to be able to explore that in lots of different ways. And similarly goes, if I was interested in a particular campus, I can start saying, okay, well, show me the Anderson campus, the Bardstown campus, Batesville, etc., etc. And we can start exploring our data in different ways across different campuses. And again, moving away from analysts having to create new reports every single time to actually empowering the end users to be able to be a click or two away from being able to find that important information that they need there as well. And I think another really important thing here to remember here, using solutions like this, as new data is coming in from your data source systems, whether it's your operational systems, sales, finance, HR, etc., that's feeding into your database and feeding into these reports. So you've essentially got real-time reporting. So when I come into work tomorrow at 9 o'clock, well, it won't be tomorrow because it'll be Saturday tomorrow, but you know, when I come to work on Monday, there'll be new data points on my chart because things have happened and I'll be able to explore that. I'm not having to recreate, I'm not having to ask my team of analysts to recreate that chart for me based on today's data. So we can always have the most up-to-date data as possible at a point in time as well. So yeah, I just wanted to share this quick example with you from a healthcare perspective as well. I am now going to show another example using manufacturing data as well. So this is another example, and this example is looking at data where it's one machine manufacturing valves. And the purpose of this report and dashboard is to serve multiple different audiences. This one is high level. Okay, leadership teams. This is the key information that we might want to see as a leadership team in terms of this process for this machine. So we can see across the top some of the key KPIs. We've got a run chart with a total work in progress. We've got the hourly scrap and box and whiskers. We've got a Pareto chart showing the reasons for breakdown. And as you can imagine, this all filters accordingly. And we've got the different stages of the process on the left-hand side, and we can filter the reports on the page for each stage of the process too. Then what we can also do is we can maybe have another view as we go down sort of the hierarchy in the organization, if you like, and we can have a KPI view, and we can start to understand, okay, well, how we're performing at each stage across our key metrics here. So we can see the performance, the quality, the OEE, etc. for each stage of the process here as well. And then again, what this is allowing your end users to do, the leadership teams, decision makers, is explore their own data. So they can, not only can they say, okay, well, there's a lot of red in QI, what's happening, why is that happening? Well, we can drill down into that and we can start exploring our data that little bit more. And this is where we really get into scaling the use of control charts across the organization, not just having a point in time view, but providing lots of different instances dependent on the end user and what it is that they're looking to achieve and see and get value from. So now, for instance, we're in the QI stage, and we can see on the left-hand side the reasons for rework and the right-hand side the reasons for scrap. We can see the reasons, the 6% of the manufactured valves are being reworked. We can see 4% of that is being scrapped. There's a lot of waste in the organization. So it's important for us to then be able to understand, well, why is that happening? And what can we do about that going forward to help reduce that? Because clearly there's going to be a lot of cost to that waste as well. So here in the Pareto chart, as you can see, it's alluding to, you know, the roughness being below tolerance and the diameter being above tolerance is the cause for the majority of the rework. So now we can, again, using the similar format, we've got the stages across the top. And now we can go, okay, well, maybe we need to understand what's happening in the previous stage, the machining stage. So let's drill down into the machining stage. And now again, we've got a run chart on the top left of the page in this example, showing the availability of the machine, and we can see when it's gone into special cause, and maybe we can understand why and start filtering what are the reasons for the breakdown, when were the toolware changes, etc. at different elements. But also what we're able to do is we're able to see this sort of scorecard view of our control chart data for the machine stage of the process. So you can see all the processes aligned to the machining stage. And at a glance, we're allowing end users and decision makers to understand, okay, where was the special cause? What is a CPK and PPK, etc., and get that high level insight and understanding. So it helps them inform them of where they might need to focus their attention. But then you can go one step further as well. If you remember from the previous page, it was the roughness and the diameter, which was causing that rework. So now we can go into the roughness metric and we can start understanding, we can see there's been special cause, and we can drill down into the specific control chart to, again, understand, okay, well, what's happening here? Where do we need to focus attention on? And we can see someone's annotated on this to tell us, actually, the machine broke down at this point where the data point was right towards the control limit, as an example in this point. So we can start having those conversations. At the very least, it's allowing us to understand what is happening statistically, to have the conversations, maybe with the engineers, with the machine managers, etc., to understand, okay, can we do something different about maintenance of the machines? Or why is the machine breaking down at that certain time, etc., etc. But it's allowing us to have those important conversations with our colleagues as well. And, you know, I'm not going to go through sort of every single page of this through all the stages, but hopefully this is giving you a vision of what is possible. And by no means are we saying this is how you should be using control charts in your organization reports. This is just an example of how some industries and some of our customers are using control charts and reports in general. You know, as Tom mentioned before, you can start bringing in finance data to supplement this as well. HR data, maybe sales data, etc., and more product information as relevant. And then I think you mentioned it before as well, Kirsten, in terms of that shop floor element. Yes, we've got it at the management level, but actually the shop floor, and this is another example of that, if you like. So some of the feedback we've been getting on the shop floor, sometimes we've got TV screens, if you like, above us, and what we'd like to see is the SPC charts and maybe a view like this for those on the shop floor. So we're just catering to all audiences and truly being able to scale the use of control charts across an organization from the very top at a high level to understand how we're performing across the organization or certain areas, and being able to drill down essentially to the I'm going to say nitty-gritty, but yeah, all the way down there as well. So hopefully that was helpful as in terms of just a few quick examples there from a couple of different industries. I guess since we're a smaller audience and we're into, are there any initial questions or comments before I go back to the slide?
So the software package you're using is called EasySPC, is it?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mention that. So yeah, so the reporting tool is Power BI, so it's Microsoft Power BI, part of Office 365. So if you're familiar with that, and yes, then EasySPC, yeah, that's the SPC custom visual, yeah.
But it looks great. Must have taken a while to get that set up. My question is, in this 10 minutes that you've been showing me, I've seen a lot of red dots, and you can hover onto, I can see one there says tool breakdown. So two questions. How are people prioritizing which one they're going to deal with?
Yeah.
Okay. And then where is the problem solving piece behind that? Is it a just do it? Is it an 8D? How are you 5 whys? Where is that logic stored, that investigation?
Sure.
So do you want me to take?
Yeah, Laura, please.
So I can only kind of share what we would do, Kirsten, from our own practice. So we would wait from so there are lots of different kind of control chart rules that you can use. Typically the ones that we operate on under kind of Western Electric rules, but you're looking for a run of 8 either below or above those the centre line, or an assignable cause outside of it. So I can show you on ours when we flip into the demo, and any one of those things. So if I've got 8 points below the middle, 8 points above the middle, or one that's going to go outside, so that big red line at the top, if it's gone outside the limits, then we go into kind of full scale investigation.
Yeah.
Of so probably do an 8D, there'd be some 5Ys in there. It would depend on which of the processes it was, whether it was like an internal customer facing, how was the error identified, did it come to light before the control chart or after, and we'd put all of that on, but it would all go in that annotation, so that if we then had a similar assignable cause, we'd be able to go back to the previous annotation and said, well, where's all that problem solving that we did previously, and is this the same thing? So i.e. we didn't get to the root cause of what happened, and we actually just got to a symptom that we thought was a root cause, or is this something completely different?
So every one of those red dots is indicating it's broke one of the rules. Right, just use Nelson's rules, but it's the same.
Yeah.
Western Electric.
Yeah.
But there were a lot. I mean, that might be 3 different rules there.
Yeah.
So how do you know? I mean, do you have a workforce ready just to jump on these? How do you know which of those anomalies you're going to work on? How do you prioritise?
It's a good question, and I think each organisation that we work with can do this in slightly different ways. So as Lauren mentioned there, they tend to use 2 or 3 of the 5 rules, if you like. Potentially, I know that some organisations we work with only use 1 of the 5 rules, and others use all 5 of the rules. So, and sometimes it might depend on the data set that you're using, the metrics and the processes based on that as well. But I think these are great questions that you're asking, because actually this is part of the reason why we've got to where we are today, because what our customers are telling us, they want to ask these questions, but they couldn't even get to the point of asking the questions because they weren't able to see the control charts in the first place. So now they're able to see the control chart data. They're now able to actually ask these questions, which has actually been really helpful. And having the leadership teams being able to see a view like this, and not everyone will drill down into the control chart themselves and understand what's happening. Someone will ring and say, Kirsten, what's happening with this particular metric this week? Why are we in special cause? Can you go and investigate? And things like that. So I think sometimes it's on culture and dependent on, how you've adopted SPC in your organizations. And maybe some teams will be further along the line than other teams as well, and they'll get a bit more hands-on. I know for some of our organizations we work with, again, they've got more of a working group who have focus on control charts, and they have certain views where, if something's in special cause right now, for example, so I haven't touched on it because I didn't go through it in too much detail, but this view here, if this is a full circle, that's telling you there's a special cause on the latest data point. So there's something happening right now. Some organizations will say, actually, and in fact, you can even filter it to say that and say, well, actually, just show me where there's special cause on the latest data point, because that's what I'm worried about right now. What do I need to action right now, almost?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a few different ways of approaching that as well.
Good.
Okay. Well, on that note, I'm going to switch back to the slides and hand it over to Lauren.
Look. So I think that was great to kind of see all the different variation of those charts. If you just skip to the next one, Oliver, please. So for us, if I kind of start at the beginning of our journey, it was very much practicing what we preach, that development of skills and mindset. As much as I love EasySPC, it's the people that kind of make the improvement over the technology. So we started with kind of making sure everybody at every level of our organisation understood variation, because it's so easy when you're looking at charts, and particularly I work as part of our generate demand team, so particularly in sales, it's very, very easy to overreact to a point that is lower than it was the month before or the week before. So we started with variation, making sure people understood the difference between common cause and special cause, and yeah, that was a non-negotiable start for us. We did start with brown paper plastered all over the walls and manual control charts while we kind of got our head round, well, what is it that we actually want to measure? So we'd all kind of huddle around that at the time every Tuesday and walk through that as an operations team. And it's super hard to kind of stay in that mindset. So we've got a control chart for the number of escalations. This is where something has been escalated internally or by our customers. And I was our head of ops at the time, and I remember breathing a sigh of relief every week when it's like, oh, no escalations this week, guys, that's good. And I remember being pulled up on it by Rich, who's now our CEO, just like, it's not a bad thing. You know, it's got a centre line, it's got a stable and predictable. Like if we had one, that would still be super stable and predictable. So it's not a negative thing. And I remember that was such a mindset shift for me to be like, right, it's only a problem if it's outside of the limits. Everything else, we can just chill. It's fine. And it's such a hard mindset to kind of get yourself into. So I'd say practical tip on the kind of develop skills and mindset, kind of just start with, what is the process telling us? Is it telling us it's a problem? No, okay, then you're fine, you can breathe. So we started there. Then identifying priority processes. I think you touched on it a bit in terms of, you know, there's so many red dots you could go after.
Yeah,
in
like
those
an outbreak
dashboards.
of measles.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we should probably all get on the blower to whoever that organisation was there, Oliver, for a bit of consultancy. So you and I talk after this. But yeah, absolutely. In terms of those priorities, knowing where to start is super important. We took each of our functional areas, so finance, generate demand, so our marketing and sales, resourcing, so utilisation. So for us, our consultants are our commodity. So we sell their time. So we took resourcing and tried to kind of give it effectively that SIPOC end to end. We took those process steps. What have we got in each of those columns? And we went after one capacity and one results measure, and that was it. That's where we started. So it possibly for bigger organisations, there might be more, but for us, you know, we started with effectively 8 to 10 control charts, and that was plenty to give us an overall view of the organisation. Some of the results measures obviously being that lagging, but obviously you'd spoken at the beginning in terms of we don't want to necessarily always wait to the end. So that's grown over time to give us some kind of daily process management kind of results measures, so we can see things becoming an issue. But I think until you start with the, well, if we're just going with one results, one capacity, what does that look like? Until you test it, you don't know what your gaps are. So I would say that's probably where I would start again if we had to start again. And then kind of actually then going after creating the measures I've just spoken a little bit about, but kind of don't be afraid to walk away from them, I would say. So there was a lot in the early days. We, from a sales perspective, we went after total website visits, which sounds fairly reasonable to get a sense of what is it you're trying to accomplish. We've got more people on the site, that makes, you know, that's great. Until you realise that you don't want people to come, you want people to stay. And it was great that we were measuring the volume of people, but actually it was more important that we measured, well, were they sticking around to consume the content that we'd created for them? Therefore, was it useful? And although it kind of, you know, breaks every instinct to say, well, surely we want to know how many people are coming, it was like, well, it's not helping us to push forward. So to walk away from that control chart and say, start anew. Yeah, I would say when you create new measures, particularly in the early days, don't be afraid to kind of to walk away from those. And then establishing a review rhythm. So I'll probably jump into the demo, but effectively, you know, we touched on it a little bit when we're talking about, Oliver talking about kind of, you want the analysis piece over the charts. And I think the biggest thing for us with EasySPC is it took a lot of that manual data collection out of the equation, which meant that the focus could be on, these things aren't wallpaper, these are the things that we're using to make the decisions in our business every day. So if I switch my screen so you can see what that looks like practically. We've got a huddle structure, so throughout the week we'll have various huddles, performance huddles, capacity huddles, and then partner huddles that will wrap up, and all of them have an agenda in loop, but effectively on a Tuesday all of the performance areas will be reviewed across the whole business by 10:30. So all the huddles are happening simultaneously. We're all looking at the control charts, and therefore any escalations can be wrapped up into the partner huddle at 11 o'clock. And they're then able to make a decision as a board. These are the things that have happened. This is what have been escalated, and they've got that full view of the organisation. Effectively, a real-time version of people version of that dashboard that Oliver's showing. So instead of kind of them as a leadership team having to look at that dashboard and saying, well, what has had an assignable cause and what hasn't, it's kind of we disband that responsibility to the functional areas. So I would lead my team through a performance huddle in the morning. If there was anything to be escalated, we would indicate that escalation. They wouldn't necessarily have to look at a dashboard. They'd just trust the process effectively. So we'd run through again the processes that are in scope, performance measures being those that we've got control charts over, and then I just wanted to touch on every huddle. We've also got kind of these behaviours, so going back to the mindset, I think this is probably the most important shift, particularly in bigger organisations. Like culturally, it's the process, it's not the person. It can be hard in a smaller organisation as well, particularly if there's only a few of you doing that role, to not be like, oh, Lauren again, as opposed to, you know, what's the process by which Lauren was operating that with. So I think the behaviours bit I always appreciate us coming back to. So I will walk you through one of our control charts. Unfortunately, I won't be able to whiz through the others just because obviously we are recording and they are commercially sensitive. But webinar registrations felt okay until somebody phones me up after this webinar and tells me otherwise. But effectively, this is showing our webinar registrations for our PMI live webinar. So we run once a month over time. And you can see for us up is good. So where we've had assignable causes, we've gone in, drilled into those, understood it, hopefully replicated it, and therefore we're able to recalculate once that was a sustained change. So I think another thing that makes EasySPC super easy is this connects straight to our dynamic system. So those registrations all come in automatically, so I don't have to think about this control chart until we review it from a performance perspective. So always super grateful for that. No red dots though, Kirsten, sorry.
Oh, there's a couple at the beginning.
Oh yeah, at the beginning, there we go.
Yeah, and then none.
But yeah, so though I think it's going to be a long old time before I shift over that upper control limit, I think, and see one over the top of that. I think I'll have to work very, very hard. But yeah, is that kind of making sense in terms of how we're using those at the moment?
I imagine it, yes. It looks like the process is gaining more variation. Is that what you wanted?
No, it isn't what we wanted. We do understand the variation, we think. So we have an apprenticeship business that feeds into these webinars, and depending on where they are in their cycle of their apprenticeship training and the topic of the webinar, depends on whether we effectively get all the apprentices or like none of the apprentices, because they can apply it as their off the job against their apprenticeship. So we've only really seen that variation since we acquired Capella.
Interesting.
Yeah, no swings, but yeah. Anything else that's useful for me to show? Probably more Oliver or Tom. Anything you were expecting me to say that I haven't?
No, I mean, I think thanks, Lauren. I think that's great from my perspective. I think, yeah, we're from our point of view really excited to see how PMI are able to use these SPC as like the experts in the field, being able to use it and use it at scale day to day is really exciting for us. Yeah, I think the one question I was just going to ask actually, Lawrence, you mentioned about that journey, I suppose you went on from the metrics you talked about, like those day-to-day, daily process metrics, I think.
Yeah.
And I guess to Kirsten's point at the beginning, how can you talk us through about that journey you went on from sort of identifying those outcome metrics to actually figuring out what the day-to-day process metrics needed to be?
Yeah, excellent question. So I think instinctively you want to just pile on all of the results measures. I think a bit like to Kirsten's earlier point, instinctively you want to know what that end result is and that you've got what your effectively your business is designed for coming through, but actually to focus on all of those enabling processes on the side part and to kind of really drill into, you know, how do those intertwine and actually what could we measure there that would give us an indication before it was a problem. I would say, yeah, focus if you can on that kind of enabling part of the sci park.
Great.
Yeah, that was the only question I was going to finish on, is there are so many inputs to a process.
Yeah.
How do you know which to measure on SPC? Because if you're trying to monitor them all, you're going to be overwhelmed. So
Sure.
how do you work out which are really your key ones?
Yeah, I mean,
ones?
yeah, it's an excellent question, and I think it will vary from business to business, but my advice always when I'm talking to clients is measure the things that you know you're going to overreact to. So like if we think about kind of our sales process, I know I'm going to completely overswing based on the number of seats. If the number of seats are down on one of my on-demand, you know, partner subscriptions and they're down on the month before, I'm going to overreact and I'm going to be like, gosh, that's down on last month. I need to do something. I need to change something. Whereas in a control chart, it steadies your reaction a little bit, because if actually what you're seeing is that's actually just part of common cause, that's normal. It's normal that you're going to sit inside those limits, and you might be 7 seats down on last month and that stings a bit, but actually that's perfectly normal. Yeah, my advice is always to start with the ones that you know you're gonna intentionally overreact to, because that's human nature, isn't it?
Yeah, and on a similar vein, I guess, we're working with a manufacturing plant over in Mexico, and the way they described how they're using the scorecard view, which I shared in that manufacturing demo as an example. One of the things you can do there, or what they did was they filtered that filter, the drop down which I said where show me where there's a special cause, essentially. They actually did the opposite. They said filter my scorecard view where we don't have special cause. And what they wanted to do was they wanted to understand where they had capable and stable processes. And then what they did was they sorted the column, the CPK column, and wherever the lower CPKs were for the stable processes, that's where they were able to then identify that's where we want to focus our improvement projects efforts on. And that's how they were able to identify that. And from their point of view, they just didn't have the data, etc., previously to be able to get to that. Okay, this is where we should focus our attention on. Here's where we've got a capable, stable process, but can be improved. So yeah, there's almost sort of the opposite to looking for special cause. It was okay. Actually, how can we start continue improving projects?
No, it's a good point. Yeah.
Okay, good time.
Thank you.
Yes, so last thing really, just wanted to make you aware there's a couple of different resources. So on the left hand side there's a QR code, so EasySPC, which we mentioned in which is part of Power BI. We're offering a 3-month trial for that for users as well. So yeah, if you're interested in that, let us know. Fill out the form, etc. Let your colleagues know, and you're happy to arrange a conversation further around that and help understand how we can support you with scaling control charts, or at the very least starting to use control charts if you're not already. I think Gemma, you mentioned that you're not yet in your organisation. And on the right hand side, Lauren, I think you've very kindly shared lots of resources which you can access from the PMI website, including podcasts, webinars, etc., all around control charts, the use of them, when to use them, how to use them, etc. And if you follow Dennis at PMI on LinkedIn,
So you shan't be short. Yeah, you shan't be short on resources if you're following Dennis. Yeah, I think yeah, there's so much more on there that actually might even be more relevant to you, Kirsten, in terms of there's a webinar recording on effectively so how do you select the vital few. So there's a 1 hour on demand for that, which will kind of talk you through a more technical from one of our consultants, Sean, of how he would go about kind of selecting what those vital few measures are. But all on the Knowledge Hub.
Excellent. Well, there's going to be questions at the end, but I think we've been doing that as we've gone through as well. So that's obviously if we've got any more, then that's absolutely fine as well. But thank you for your time today.